I knew something was off the second Mark's number flashed on my phone. His voice on the other end was colder than usual. "We need to talk. Can you come in?" I didn't even need to ask why. I'd felt it coming for weeks. Tiny signs, little shifts. The tension between us had grown unbearable, but I couldn't have guessed how fast it would happen. I pulled into the parking garage, my stomach already tied in knots. The company I'd poured myself into for 10 years now felt like a stranger's place. I sat there for a moment, staring at the building, thinking about the late nights, the missed birthdays, the countless times Sarah had sighed when I promised I'd be home in time for dinner, but didn't show up. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed as I made my way to Mark's office. He didn't even look up when I walked in, just slid a folder across the desk with a quiet, "It's nothing personal, Sam. Just restructuring." His voice sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script. I stared at the papers in front of me, but all I could think about was how much of myself I'd given to this place. Late nights pushing deadlines, fighting for deals, only for them to turn around and toss me aside like a broken machine. The words were a blur as Mark talked about the company's new direction and how this was just the nature of business. But I heard none of it. It wasn't just the job. It was everything I'd missed, my son's baseball games, the birthday dinners Sarah and I had celebrated with her quiet disappointment as I arrived late, again. And now this. My career, my loyalty, it all meant nothing. It was over. Just like that. I walked out of the office numb, and as soon as the door shut behind me, my phone buzzed. I glanced down, and my heart sank. The company's biggest account, the deal I'd worked months for, the one that could have saved me from this mess, was awarded to another firm. I couldn't breathe. I'd been replaced, just like that. And the worst part, they didn't even care enough to tell me to my face. I barely remembered the drive home. The car felt like a coffin, the road stretching out in front of me like a bad omen. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I was already exhausted from the weight of everything that had just happened. Inside, the house was quiet in that way that felt wrong. Ben was in the living room, eyes glued to his video game screen, fingers moving fast as he shot some alien creature. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Sarah was on the phone, pacing back and forth with a furrowed brow, trying to make sense of some doctor's appointment that probably had nothing to do with me. The noise of the game, the low hum of Sarah's conversation, filled the air like it was all happening in another universe. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a second, not sure how to break the news. Sarah glanced up, saw me standing there, and then her eyes went back to the phone. "Hey, I gotta go," she said to whoever was on the other end, the conversation already losing her attention. She clicked the phone off, but there was no warmth in her smile, just the usual distant kind of politeness. I took a breath. "They let me go," I said, keeping my voice steady. The words didn't feel real coming out of my mouth. I hadn't even realized how much I had expected them to not say it, to not do it. Her face didn't move, not even a little. She stared at me for a beat, then muttered, "So, what now?" I wasn't sure if she was asking me or herself. Her voice was flat, almost like she'd heard the same thing 100 times before. It stung, but I didn't have the energy to fight it. Instead, I shoved my hands in my pockets and took a step back. "Mark's been pushing me out for months, Sarah. Even after I brought in the biggest proposal they've seen in years. You know the one, the Morrison Enterprises deal?" She didn't respond. Not right away. Her eyes flickered over to Ben, then back to me. But her mind was already somewhere else. 1,000 miles away, maybe. I felt a knot in my chest tighten. There was nothing left to say, was there? I turned to the living room window, staring out at the driveway as if I could see my future if I just looked hard enough. The whole house felt like it was filled with this emptiness, like we were all in it, but no one was really here. Later, after dinner, Ben was already in bed, his gaming addiction still going strong. I sat down at the computer, needing to do something, anything. I pulled up the old proposal I'd worked on for months, the one that had made the company, the one I knew was going to secure my place there, no matter what else happened. The words blurred as I opened file after file, searching for that final version. I scrolled through drafts, checked dates, all the little things that had gone into it, and then I saw it. The final version, the one that had been sent to Morrison Enterprises. My name was gone, not a single mention of me, no reference to the work I'd put in, no credit, nothing, just gone. It was like I had never existed, but that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came when I saw who had signed the deal. Greg Bennett, the new CEO brought in under Mark's direction, the guy who'd taken over key projects after all my years of work. The same Greg Bennett who had taken credit for the deal that I had nurtured from the ground up. My stomach twisted. How could they do this to me? How could they just erase me? I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my fingers frozen over the keyboard. It felt like a stupid move, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know if someone else remembered, someone outside the company who wasn't blind to what had happened. So I shot off a quick email to Chris Dunn, an old contact of mine who used to advise for Morrison Enterprises before they switched to us. I didn't expect a reply. Hell, I wasn't sure if I wanted one. But I needed to ask. Hey Chris, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out about something. The deal with Morrison Enterprises, the one that we worked so hard on. It's been awarded to a different firm, and I'm no longer with my company. I've seen some changes I'm not too happy about, and I was wondering if you remembered the original proposal I put together. Would really appreciate your thoughts on this. I hit send, sat back in the chair, and waited for nothing. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was desperation. But that's where I was. The next morning, when I saw Chris's name pop up in my inbox, I almost couldn't believe it. I clicked it open without hesitation. I do remember you, Sam. Look, I didn't realize things had gone south for you. I heard about the deal. Your proposal is part of why they signed with us. But the company, they're not giving credit where it's due. It was the first piece of good news I'd gotten in days. My chest felt a little lighter, but also heavier, like something was starting to click into place. My mind raced as I typed back. What do you mean? Are they taking credit for my work? A few minutes later, Chris's reply came. Morrison Enterprises never knew you were pushed out of the company. They were under the impression that you were still with your firm when the deal went through. It wasn't just a personal betrayal, Sam. It was a professional one. I let the words sink in, my throat tightened. Professional. That was the word. I'd worked so damn hard on that deal, and now they were acting like it had never been mine to begin with. They'd built their success on my silence. I felt a surge of anger, hot and bitter. I wasn't going to let this slide. I grabbed my phone, tapped out a quick message to Greg Bennett, the new CEO, the man who just waltzed in and taken over my company. Greg, I'd appreciate the chance to speak with you directly about the recent developments regarding Morrison Enterprises. I believe we have some unfinished business. Let me know when you're available. I took a breath, hit send, and waited. Within minutes, I had a reply. Thank you for your email, Sam. Greg is unavailable for a direct conversation at this time. All future correspondence should be directed to HR. My stomach dropped. HR. Of course. The usual corporate dodge. No real answers, just a wall of bureaucracy. I gritted my teeth, feeling the rage rise again. This wasn't over. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next few days blurred together. I spent hours staring at my phone, at emails, at job listings I wasn't sure I wanted to even look at. What was I supposed to do? Go back to another firm? Work for someone else? Try to pretend that nothing had changed when everything had been turned upside down? I reached out to a few old contacts, threw a few feelers out, but it all felt empty, like I was just chasing the same thing, trying to go back to something I could never fix. Later that evening, after Ben was done with his homework, I sat down with him at the kitchen table. He was leaning back in his chair, eyes wide, tapping his pencil on the paper. He had this quiet optimism about him that almost made me sick with jealousy. "So, what happens now, Dad?" he asked, not even looking up. I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation was coming sooner or later. "I don't know yet, Ben, but I'm thinking of making some changes." I smiled, trying to keep it light, but I could tell he wasn't buying it. "You mean like a new job?" "Something like that," I said. "I've been thinking about starting my own thing, a business that does things the right way, one that doesn't screw people over to get ahead." Ben's eyes lit up. "That sounds cool. You could be the boss." I laughed, but it didn't feel funny. "Maybe, but it's going to take a lot of work. We'll see." I spent the next few hours in front of the computer, scribbling down ideas for a business plan. I started to think about all the things I'd hated about my old company, the way they treated their employees, the ethics they said they had but never followed. I wrote down ideas for a company built on integrity, not just profits. A place where people would actually be valued. Maybe it was just a dream, but for the first time in days, it felt like something real, something I could fight for. The next morning, my inbox had a message that made my heart skip. It was from Jake, an old coworker of mine from back when I was still at the firm. We'd lost touch over the years, but he'd always been one of the good ones. "Hey Sam, I know things have been rough for you. I've been working on something, and I think it might be a good fit for you. We're in the process of launching a new company, and we need someone with your experience to help lead it. You'd be in a key role. Let me know if you're interested." I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to wrap my head around it. A leadership role? With a new company? The offer was too good to ignore, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was the opportunity I needed. Maybe it was the chance to build something from the ground up, something I could actually believe in. I shot off a quick reply, my fingers moving faster than my thoughts. "I'm interested. Let's talk." For the first time in days, I felt like I was finally moving forward. The meeting with Jake felt like stepping into another world. I'd known him for years, smart, driven, always one step ahead of the game. But this was different. He was sitting across from me, eyes sharp, a look of quiet excitement in his gaze. "Sam, I know things have been tough, but I've been working on something new. A consultancy," Jake started, leaning forward. "We're putting together a team, and I need someone with your experience. Someone who gets the business, but also knows how to do it right. I need you as the CEO." The words hit me like a jolt of electricity. CEO? Me? I'd never pictured myself in that kind of role, not after all that had gone down. But as Jake laid out the details, I couldn't ignore the pull. This was a chance. A real chance to build something that aligned with my values. "Think about it," Jake said. "We're going to be different. Ethical, transparent, everything your last company wasn't. We need someone who knows how to run a team, someone who can make decisions with integrity. You're exactly what I've been looking for." I leaned back in my chair, taking it all in. There was excitement, yes, but there was fear too. A CEO? It was a huge leap. Everything was on the line. It felt risky. Hell, it was risky. But I couldn't ignore the fact that this might be the only shot I had to do things the right way. "I need some time to think about it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my mind was spinning. Jake nodded, understanding. But by the end of the meeting, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let fear hold me back anymore. This was it, the opportunity I'd been waiting for. And this time, I wasn't going to be another cog in a corporate machine. I was going to build something of my own. The next few days were a whirlwind. Jake and I dove into business plans, discussing everything from core values to market strategies. We talked about what we wanted our brand to represent: honesty, fairness, and putting the employees first. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but we also knew we could do it better than the firms I'd spent my career with. For the first time in months, I felt energized. My work ethic, the one I had poured into my old job, the one that had been undervalued, felt like an asset again. I reached out to some old colleagues, ones I respected and who had been in the same boat as me. A few said yes right away. Others, not so much, but the ones who did were ready to fight for something different. It felt good, building from the ground up, piece by piece, with people who were just as invested in the vision as I was. But just when I thought things were starting to come together, I got a call that knocked me off balance. Mark, my former boss. "Sam," he started, the tone in his voice smoother than I remembered, almost apologetic. "I've been thinking about what happened and I wanted to see if we could work something out. I'm willing to offer you a new role. Maybe not exactly what you had before, but we'd like you back. To help with some of the fallout from the restructuring." I could feel my blood pressure rise. Was he serious? After everything? After all the bullshit? Now he wanted to make a deal? "I'm not interested," I said, not even thinking about it. I was done. Done with him, done with the company. I've moved on. There was a silence on the other end of the line, like he wasn't expecting that answer. "Sam, please. This isn't about what happened before. We're trying to salvage the company. I can make this work for you. Just think about it." I was done thinking. I had my own path now, and no amount of corporate politicking was going to change that. "I'm not coming back," I said, and hung up. As I set the phone down, a small sense of relief washed over me. Mark might have thought he could pull me back in, but I wasn't going to be anyone's second choice anymore, not after everything. Now, the future was mine to shape. A few days after Jake and I were making serious moves, we secured our first big client, a direct competitor of Morrison Enterprises. The deal was everything I'd hoped for: ethical, transparent, and the kind of partnership that felt right from the beginning. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from former colleagues asking about opportunities with us, people who saw what we were building and wanted in. It was happening. We were doing it. One night, after a long day of meetings and brainstorming, I sat down at the kitchen table with Sarah. She was quiet, flipping through a cookbook, but I could tell something was different in the air. She had this weight to her, like she was carrying the tension with me, but there was also something softer now. Support, maybe. "So," she said, looking up at me, "how's it going?" I smiled, feeling the truth of it in my chest. "It's going really well. We're building something, Sarah, something real." She nodded slowly, her eyes meeting mine. "I can see it. You've wanted this for a long time, haven't you?" I sat back, letting the weight of her words settle in. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about us, about what we could build together. It felt right finally, like I was on the path I was always meant to be on. And then, the next morning, I got a news alert on my phone. Mark's resignation had been announced, just like that. The board had pushed him out, the same way he'd pushed me out. The irony was impossible to ignore. The man who'd torn my career apart was now the one cleaning up the wreckage. It was a small victory, sure, but it was mine. My old company was on the brink of collapse while I was on the rise. I had my future now, one I was building from scratch, and there was nothing Mark or anyone else could do to take it away from me. A few weeks into the launch of the new company, things were moving faster than I could have imagined. The press had started covering us, and I found myself the face of a new kind of consulting firm, one built on ethics and success. I had the kind of press I used to dream about, but it wasn't just about the publicity. It was about the work, the genuine impact we were making. It felt like a shift in the universe. I was sitting in my office one afternoon, scrolling through emails, when one caught my eye. It was from an anonymous address, no name attached. At first I thought it was spam, but then the subject line hit me. "Documents you need to see." My heart skipped a beat. I opened the email. Inside were several documents, internal memos, emails, and, most shocking of all, versions of the Morrison Enterprises proposal, versions with my name stripped from it. The final draft, the one that had won them the deal, was unrecognizable. All traces of my contributions had been erased, replaced with the company's new leadership team. My heart pounded as I scanned through the files, each one a piece of the puzzle I'd been trying to solve. I didn't hesitate. I printed everything out and made a call. I filed a formal complaint with the authorities and reached out to a few key media contacts I'd made over the past few weeks. It didn't take long for the story to break. The press picked it up fast. Whistleblower exposes unethical practices at former top firm. My name was in the headlines again, but this time, it wasn't about being fired. It was about exposing the truth, about how the company I'd devoted myself to had stolen from me and countless others to secure deals. Within days, the tide began to turn. Articles came out, one after another, revealing the full extent of the unethical practices. The company's dirty laundry was aired for the world to see. The same executives who had once looked down on me were now scrambling to cover their tracks. Mark, of course, tried to salvage what he could, but it was too late. The board was forced to sell off the company's assets, and rumors swirled that Mark would be ousted. The whispers turned into official reports, and soon enough, the company that had once been my entire world was collapsing under its own weight. It was a slow burn, and every article, every scandal that broke, felt like a small victory. I was done with them. But that didn't mean I didn't get satisfaction from seeing them drown in their own lies. And then came the final blow. A week after the story broke, I got another email, this time from the legal department. The old firm wanted to settle. They offered a sum, significant enough that it made me stop and think for a moment. But I wasn't in this for the money. I was in it for the principle. I wasn't the guy who got fired anymore. I was the guy who built something better, something real. I turned the offer down. The media ran with that too. Sam Harrison rejects settlement, holds firm to his values. The old company was sinking, and here I was building something new, something solid, something that mattered. I was no longer the man who was left behind. I was the one who had shown the world what it looked like to rise from the ashes and do things the right way. I had my justice, not in a courtroom, not through some drawn-out battle, but through truth. Through the work I was doing now, the company I was building, the legacy I was creating. And that felt a hell of a lot better than anything they could have ever offered me.